Hello, barakatuh, everyone. Welcome to everyone to this first Arabic training for this year. Jazakallah khair everyone for attending from different parts of Dundee, and also Jazakallah a big thank you to our speaker, to Amina, who will be delivering our training today, inshallah. We're very, very excited about today's training. There is a lot, inshallah, that hopefully will come out of today's session. And we are absolutely honored to have Sabina with us today. I know her personally, and mashallah, there is so much that we can, inshallah, benefit from today. I'll just let you know a bit about Thamina from her bio, just inshallah before I pass it on. So Thamina completed her master's in social anthropology in 2002, and then she went to study Arabic at the European Institute of Human Sciences in Wales. Following that, she completed a PGDE in primary education in 2005. She has taught Arabic grammar for adults at the Institute, and currently she's teaching Arabic to 12 to 14-year-olds, and she's been doing that for 2 years. She's also completing her She's also completing her TEFL course to enhance her skills in teaching languages. And mashallah, she's an amazing educator, and I can't wait to inshallah hear today's session, and hopefully inshallah I know that she has something really exciting planned for us, something very interactive. So be ready to have your comments and questions and your thoughts out inshallah today. So without further ado, I will pass it to Thamina, inshallah.
Okay, assalamu alaikum everybody.
وعليكم السلام. وعليكم السلام.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. Okay, so we're going to be doing a bit of an Arabic training now. I'm in no way am I an expert in this. I'm just going to share some ideas that I've used, share some ideas that I've seen used by other teachers, and inshallah then you as a team, mashallah, your team is huge. I work by myself and I feel like I'm all alone. Mashallah, your team is really big. So if you work together, then inshallah you can actually do something inshallah really amazing. It's lovely to see you all. What I'd like you to do to start off with is I'd like you to take 1 minute. I want you to write down 3 qualities that make you a fantastic teacher. You personally, 3 qualities that you have that make you absolutely fantastic teacher. Okay, who would like to share their 3 qualities?
I'll go first.
Yeah, okay. Fantastic, thank you.
So I wrote patience, I wrote smiling, and I wrote some experience.
Good, fantastic. So patience, absolutely. Everybody needs to have patience when they're teaching, especially kids. Smiling, okay, that's really good. Positive attitudes, really fantastic. And you have some experience in teaching, fantastic. Okay, anybody else who would like to share their 3 qualities that make them a fantastic teacher?
So my Arabic knowledge is quite small compared to other teachers here. So I went for number 1, I'm considerate and caring, which I think from pupils' perspective is very important. I'm very organized and methodical, and I'm also very pupil oriented, meaning whatever I teach, I try to make it a point that it's not about me just giving the knowledge. It has to be about them being able to take the knowledge from me. So whatever I do, it has to be in accordance with how they are learning.
Okay, fantastic. So pupil-centered approach, very important. Methodical. Okay, I'm not the most organized person in the world, but when it comes to teaching, I have to be methodical. I have to think, right, what is the first step? And also, I've gone from teaching Arabic to adults, where I taught huge amounts of grammar in a short space of time. When you're teaching kids, you have to break it into the tiniest little piece and say, right, one crumb at a time, and then add it up. And when I explain it to kids, I say it's like your Lego. You know, when you're playing with Lego, you put one brick at a time. Okay, and if the bricks are not stuck together properly, then the next one's not going to stick on, and then the whole house will fall apart. Okay, so I say to my kids, each little brick that I'm giving you, you're adding it to your house. Make sure the other bricks are in place, and then put the next brick in. So yeah, very methodical and thinking it through, like what is the next step that I need to teach. Okay, Jazakallah khair, Sister Caitlin. Anybody else?
I'll say something. How are you doing?
Yeah.
Long time. Okay. I don't know if this makes don't know if this is teacher qualities or whatever, but this is something that I do with all my kids. I think from all the stages that I've taught, I don't always just tend to stick to like the syllabus and what's in the lesson plan for that day and things like that. I always like to build up their characters as well. So I always want them to see how they could be a better Muslim from now, because obviously I've taught all ranges of stages, so from the oldest to the youngest ones, and now I'm in the middle group. So I want them from now to work on their character and to know what they can do to be a better Muslim, almost kind of like as a training ground for when they get older, because this is the time where you can mold them, their personalities and things like that. So I want to give them like connections and making it istighfar and giving like charity and all these kind of things. So not just like what I'm teaching like on that day, but I really want to build up their character for them to be the best that they can be from now, so when they grow up it's easier. I like to get to know them on a personal level, so I'll always ask them at the beginning of the day, like how's your day been, how's your weekend, things like that. And I say to them if there's anything that's bothering you, or if something's happened at school, or you've been bullied, or someone said anything to you, like this is like a safe space where you can pull me aside and you can speak to me and things like that. So my approach is kind of like quite personal that way. And a big thing again for me is like that connection to Allah. So I sometimes think that at that age they might think Allah's scary and he punishes and there's hell and things like that, but I want them to know that Allah's like your friend, like before anyone else, and he loves you more than anyone else, so that if they've got an issue, like, or if they're worried about something, then just inside themselves that they could talk to him. And it's that thing then for Salah, that he's so busy but he's directing himself to you during Salah, so don't miss it. So a lot of the time the boys can just they'll nudge each other and they'll laugh and things like that, but for them to actually understand that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is there and he's watching you, like, and we're just like nothing, we're little people in Dundee, you know what I'm saying, but Allah's given us that time, so we should have that respect and things like that. So like I say, it's not so much to do with the work, but I think it's a lot of kind of character build and wanting them to be the best that they can be from now, so that it's easier, like as a training ground for when they're older.
Yeah, fantastic. So you're going for a holistic approach to education, which is fantastic. I think what happens in school sometimes is like, this is the block for English, and this is the block for maths, and this is the block for history, and it's all like disjointed kind of knowledge. What you're saying is that if we bring in everything together, they will understand why they're learning it. So we're not just teaching Arabic as a language, we're teaching, okay, why are we learning Arabic as a language? We have the Quran, we're connecting to Allah, when we pray, we can understand that whole kind of holistic kind of approach. And also for you to get on a personal level, as I say, with your students, that will help them to feel confident in Arabic as well. It'll help them to feel comfortable and confident to be able to speak and have a go in the class, inshallah. Okay, I'm afraid we don't have time to go through everybody's. I'm sure everybody has lots and lots of positive things that they can contribute, and they do contribute to their teaching. Obviously, I don't know all of you. I haven't watched you all teaching, but inshallah, you all have things that you can bring to the teaching of Arabic. Now, the reason I started with this exercise is because in order to be a good, fantastic, and effective teacher, you have to believe that you are one. You can't just say, oh, well, I'm not very good and I'm not. You have to believe it, okay? Because if you don't believe it, your kids are not going to believe it either, okay? You have to believe in yourself, and you have to be able to put that energy, put that life into the teaching that you're doing. Another reason I'm mentioning this is because 2 years ago, when I was asked to teach Arabic to the kids, we set up this project about 3 years ago to teach Arabic. And we had another teacher who's teaching the older class at the time. And then she had to leave for whatever reason. And then we didn't have a teacher. And the course organizer said, well, why don't you teach it? And I was like, well, I'm not Arab. I don't speak Arabic it's not my language. It's the third language that I've learned. I don't speak it that fluently. What am I going to teach the kids? And it's like, well, just have a go for the term. Just have a go, have a try, and see how it goes. And honestly, alhamdulillah, it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. Okay, one of the best things is that I'm teaching kids in the community how to understand Arabic, and I've been teaching them now for 2 years. And honestly, now they're coming to me after 2 years and saying, you know what? When I read Quran, I can actually understand why I read it. Okay, and for me, that's enough. Even if one of them came out and said, I understand what I'm reading, I would be happy with that. Okay, so for me personally, it's taught me so much. I learned so much from the kids. I learned as much from them as I do from myself. Okay, I've learned how to break Arabic down, as I say, into little tiny bits and be able to explain it to people, which helps me to understand Arabic better as well. I'm learning Arabic all the time. I'm revising all my Arabic all the time. As I say, it's not my language. I have to keep on top of it. Okay, my family don't speak Arabic. I help my husband. My husband speaks Arabic, and I speak Arabic, but it's not our native language. So if you will allow me to, I'll just show you. So I've been teaching my students for 2 years. Some of them have only done 2 years of Arabic. If you allow me to, I will just show you what level of Arabic my students are at. I'll just give you a bit of background. They do 4 hours a week with me, okay, 2 lessons a week for 4 hours, and then they do some holiday courses, okay. And this is the level of the Arabic that my students can now. So this is their end of year 2 exam, which they sat in September. Okay, so this is the comprehension paper. I'm just going to show you what level of Arabic they're doing after 2 years. And some of them have not done any Arabic. None of them are Arabs. None of them spoke Arabic as their own language. This is the level of Arabic that my students are now reading and comprehend. They can understand this without any help from me. Okay, this was the end of year exam. Okay, so this is the kind of level that you can reach within a very short space of time. I mean, honestly, I think this is quite a short space of time. Like in 2 years, they can read this and they can understand it. They can then answer questions. They're obviously older children. I know some of you are teaching 5 and 6 year olds. 5 and 6 year olds are probably not going to get to this level after 2 years because obviously they take a bit more time to grasp the concepts. But I can just show you.
How old are your students?
My students, they're 12, 13, and 14 now. But when they started with me, they were like, 10, 11, 12-year-olds. So, then I would be able to give them questions like this, and they would be able to answer in Arabic in sentences. Okay?
As a beginner or already some?
Beginners, complete beginners. So they didn't know any Arabic. They were not Arabs. They don't speak any Arabic. So this is them coming in fresh, and after 2 years, they're able to understand a reasonable level. I think a reasonable level. Mashallah. Okay. So as I say, I know a lot of you are teaching kind of younger kids. So what I'm going to do in my presentation today is kind of explore different tools that you can use depending on what age group you're teaching. I have my younger kids in a class with another teacher, so I've been in and watched what the other teachers are presenting with my younger kids and how they're learning Arabic as well. So I'm sure that you will have lots of experience to share. So anytime you want to say, oh, I've tried this and it's worked, that's fine as well. Okay, so don't feel like I'm just here to present. I'm here to listen to you as well. Okay, right. So where do we start from? The first thing you need to know, obviously, is you need to know your audience. Okay, you need to know who am I teaching and what skills they already have, how old they are. Okay, why do you think it's important to bear in mind how old your students are?
Maybe of their ability.
Yeah, their ability. Mm-hmm. What else changes with age? What kind of thing changes with age?
How much they can understand.
Yeah, how much they can understand, yeah.
I had in the past where I had to, when I was saying a word in Arabic, where the kids did it and then translated to English, and the kids didn't really know the English, even the English word. So I think the age matters with the knowledge of even the vocabulary and the how difficult the word is, or how how big is the word. Like if they're using it like every day, or they never heard about it, or it might be like not for their age. I don't know if you actually get what I mean, but
yeah. So age appropriate vocabulary, and how much they already know in English, even what level they are. The other thing you have to consider is, what is the attention span of my children? I mean, there's a big difference between how much my 5-year-old how long he can concentrate for, and how long my 14-year-old can concentrate for. I mean, it's a big difference, right? So when you've got 5-year-olds, you might be in an hour's lesson, you might be doing 5 different things. Okay, you might be doing, I'm going to do a song for 5 minutes, and I'm going to do some writing for 10 minutes, and we're going to read a book for this amount of time. You have to be able to chop and change between that. Whereas if I ask my students to do a comprehension for half an hour, it would be fine because they're older. Okay, so you have to obviously take into consideration how old your students are and their capabilities, and how long they can concentrate for on a particular activity. The other thing is, do they speak Arabic at home? Okay, do your students speak Arabic at home? Now, I don't know what your setup is exactly. I'm guessing that some of your students do and some of your students don't. Is that fair to say? Is that right?
Yeah, we've got Arabic speaking students, and
so do you have like a mixture of Arabic speakers and non-Arabic speakers?
Yeah, we do.
So yeah, I mean, you would take into consideration whether their child can speak Arabic already. Now, there are positives and negatives to this. Okay, if you have a child who speaks Arabic at home already, that's fantastic, right? They've already got the vocab, they've already got the sentence structures in their heads a little bit, that kind of thing. But there could be negatives as well. What could be the negatives of a child who speaks Arabic at home being in your classroom? Most of it's positive, but
I think the problem with the different dialogues, like how Arab countries, they don't all speak the same dialogue. Libyan different than the Syrian, then the Iraqi. Then I think this is a huge problem, because usually when the parents speak at home, they don't really speak Fusha language, Arabic with Fusha, so they speak with their dialogue, and some vocabularies, they're completely different to the Fusha, and it will be very hard to tell for the kids, especially with the young age, if they forever they knew, like for example, the cup is like, in my own dialogue is called tasa, but if it's you're gonna tell them like it's scoop, it will be huge like difference. It's like they know it in Arabic, it's called tasa, but if you tell them that it's scoop in Arabic or ka'as, it will be hard, because you're just gonna change something they've been believing for a long time.
Yeah, exactly. So as you say, every Arab country has their own dialect, and this can be a little bit confusing. On the whole, it's a positive thing for them that they can speak Arabic already. But we also have to be aware that obviously some kids might have their dialects that they're bringing from home. Okay, what have they learned already? So say for example, you get a new student who's 9 years old, but they've never done Arabic before. Okay, so we have to take into consideration, okay, well, they don't know anything. I mean, I think Sister Caitlin is saying that you put them into the levels anyway. How would you know when you get a new class, like say for example next year, when you have a new class, how will you know what they already know in Arabic? Do you have a system whereby one teacher tells the next teacher, this is what the children know, this is what they've covered, here's their test results, and here's what they've got, this is what they're able to do, they can say these words, they can say write these sentences. Do you have a system like that?
So for up to now, what we've had is, because we have the yearly syllabus, so we always say to a teacher who takes a new class that you should go and check out the syllabus of the last year and possibly the weekly plan, so you would see what they've been doing last year. and also get feedback from the teacher. But we're currently working on a more effective system, and Sister Sarah is helping out a lot with that, so that we would actually, have more information about each and every child, rather than it being general, because I think it is very important. And even not talking about each and every child, like the classes, they vary. Sometimes there's a bunch of children together who go like really fast and they all learn a lot during one year, and then certain years there are children, like for them it takes more time. So you can't always say whatever is in the syllabus they actually know all of it. So that's why, we're working on a better system.
It's when you teach a year and they improve, and then comes the summer holiday where they lose all what you taught them, and they come new in the next year because they don't speak the language at home, and you keep advising to watch videos or read books or things, but it sometimes doesn't work. So they come back as new. I find it really difficult because each year I have to start from the start. Even the very few words it stay with them, but most of the words are gone. And it's really, this is what I find difficult in starting a new year. With kids, I hope that they remember much, but it doesn't. They doesn't.
Yeah, it can be a problem. I mean, I don't know. Obviously, I'm not here to shake up your system. I'm not here to say that there's a better way.
I don't know, because we teach them Arabic, not because they wanted to, it's because their parents wanted to. So sometimes I find that it's not the child what he wants, but it's others who wants them to learn. So this is, and the others are, when they leave your class, they don't speak the language at all. So I find it, even myself, when I learned a new language, it's only in class. I use it only in class. So I learned French. I can't speak French outside the class, so I lose most of the words. When I start another class, probably I start from scratch again. So it's the same with the kids, and this is what makes it difficult for every, I think, all the teacher in this school.
I can tell you what we do. I don't think as teachers or even the pupils, they might be very open to this idea. But what we do is, in the Christmas holidays and Easter holidays, we do a 1-week intensive. Okay, they spend half their holidays in intensive courses. They're there from 9:30 in the morning till 1 for a whole week. And in the summer, it's 3 weeks. Okay, half your summer holiday, you're going to be doing Arabic. And actually, most of our teaching gets done in that summer holiday period. They learn so much. With my students this year, I taught them the 10 verb forms. Okay, we learned fa'ala, 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 af'ala. They learned the whole thing, the musters and the active participles, and whatever. They learned the whole thing in 3 weeks. Over the summer holidays, they were with me day in, day out, Monday to Friday, and they learned so much.
We only teach Arabic 4 hours a week, but it's on 2 days, and I find that it's not enough for kids to learn much. So it's a short time to do with the kids. That's my excuse to them, actually.
Well, my students are with me 4 hours a week as well, sister. Two lessons, 4 hours a week. That's it. That's what they do. They're with me on Sunday and Tuesday. Between Tuesday and the next Sunday, there's 5 days, and I think, okay, what am I going to give them to do in between so that they're not going 5 days without Arabic? Okay, so we'll go on to that inshallah later on. We'll be talking about homework and what should homework entail and why is it important to give homework with Arabic. Okay, so you need to know your audience. You need to know your students. You need to know their reading, writing skills. You need need to know what have they done before, what are they able to do. Also take into consideration special needs, if there's any children with special needs that might not be able to write yet, or if they're struggling with English writing, are they really going to be able to cope with Arabic writing? You might have to kind of assess them on a different level. You might be assessing some children with written, you might be assessing some children with more oral work or something like that. So take into consideration the students that you have and take it from there. Right, so when we're planning language lessons, we've got what are called receptive skills and we've got productive skills. Okay, so the receptive skills are obviously the ones where they are receiving the information from you, they are receiving the language from you, and these are reading and listening. And hand in hand with those, obviously, we have what are called the productive skills, which are speaking and writing. Okay, now what I would suggest is that you try and focus on one of these skills at a time and base a lesson around a particular skill. It doesn't have to be only that skill in that lesson, but it might be that mostly that's what you're doing in that lesson. My course is mostly reading and writing. We don't actually do a lot of speaking and listening because it's a slightly different course to the one that you're doing. We kind of we are mostly doing Quranic Arabic for reading and writing purposes mostly. So we don't do a lot of speaking, but we do some of it. Right, so what's reading?
Recognizing the alphabet and saying them loud.
And also understand the word.
I think pronunciation.
Obtaining information through a written form.
Okay, so it's to do with obtaining information. It's also to do with what do these letters say? What do these words say? So when we talk about Arabic reading, we've got different levels, haven't we? We've got different levels. We've got how to associate sounds with letters and words. Okay, so that's like the phonetic deciphering of words. Okay, so this is a ba and this is a ta and this is a ya, and you know what sounds do these letters make? When I put them together like this, when I put vowels on them, what does it say? Obviously, the children will be doing a lot of that in their Quran lessons. Okay, so they will be doing a lot of this phonetic stuff in their Quran lessons. Reading obviously goes beyond that. Reading goes beyond that because we want them to understand what it is that they're reading, and also to comprehend what does this mean for me. Okay, what are the inferred meanings that I can get out of this? What can I understand from this? And from an Islamic perspective, what is it that is teaching me to put into my own life? Okay, so reading is a very, very broad kind of area. What about reading for enjoyment? Reading is a form of entertainment as well, isn't it?
That's like watching a movie in your head.
Yeah, exactly. So reading is entertainment as well. It's fun. It's something that they should enjoy. Okay, so when we think about what reading materials we're going to be giving to our kids to read and to be read to as well, obviously younger kids you need to read to them. We need to think about what is it that's going to spark their interest. What are they going to be interested in? Okay, so not all kids are interested in the same things. Might think about getting some reading material that makes them kind of enjoy Arabic a little bit more. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want you to have a look at these 4 statements on the screen and think about whether they are true or false. Okay, so have a look at them. Think about what you think. Is it true or is it false? Okay. So let's have a look at the first one then, this one here. We should only present texts that include grammar structures that the children already know. What do you think?
False.
I think false. You need to encourage them to know like a new grammar So maybe just not too much, but just a bit of new grammar would be okay, just to encourage them to know something new or to learn something new.
Yes, that's what I think. Well, it's false. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You don't need to know the grammar of something. When you read English, for example, if English is your first language and you read English, when I read Shakespeare, do I know the grammar? Do I know the grammar of what Shakespeare is saying? I mean, I'm no expert in Shakespeare. If I read Shakespeare, I might understand what he's saying, but I don't really know all the grammar structures of this is a past participle and this is. I don't need to know that because English is just, I just read it, I understand it. Okay, so the grammar level of a text doesn't need to be something that they know how to produce themselves. Of course, it doesn't. You can give a much higher level of reading to children than what they're able to produce themselves. Okay, so this one is false. Okay. What about this one here? Going around the class. Sorry, was somebody saying something?
Yeah, I was saying something. Assalamu alaikum, Tasneem. I think like choosing the paragraph to read depends on the age of the child. Like even like when choosing like a certain level of grammar, it would depend on the child's age. It would be better if you consider the child's age before choosing the paragraph that you're going to read, and for them to listen or try to read as well.
Yeah. I mean, I don't mean go so high that they don't know what's going on, but they don't need to know all the grammar structures that are in a reading text. But yeah, you're right. You would choose something which is appropriate and which is not too difficult. You don't want the children to feel, oh, I don't know how to do any of this. But at the same time, you want the children to feel a bit of a challenge. Okay, when children are challenged and they feel like there's a bit of a challenge going on, they do feel like they're achieving something. They're like, oh yeah, I read that and I understood what was going on. So they have to have a little bit of a challenge so that they can feel that they've accomplished something that they couldn't accomplish before. Okay, so this one, going around the class, taking turns to read. We all know what this is. All our teachers told us to do this when we were younger. Going around the class, taking turns to read is a useful exercise to do with children. What do you think?
I think that with Quran would be a very good idea to hear the pronunciation and to with the correction of the teacher, the kids will understand more and get more and more. With Arabic, I don't think so. Maybe with the younger one, helping them with the pronunciation would be good. Hearing the word again and again. But with older one, I don't think that would be a good idea, unless if it's taking turns, like if the paragraph is the lesson is very long, maybe just to make them more interested, or just to tell them like everyone gonna read 2 or 3 lines, but not reading the same paragraph again and again, like again and again. In my opinion, that would be a good idea.
I think it has its pluses and minuses. It does feel to be a very old school method, and the old school teachers would say that is a good way to keep everybody involved and make sure that everybody's reading at the same time, because nobody would want to not know where we're at once their name is called out. So it's like, okay, Caitlin, you have to read now. And I'm like, I don't know where we are. So it's a way to make sure that everybody's engaged. But it doesn't always work the same way with nowadays kids, because they tend to not care that they don't know, and they're not ashamed at all. So from that perspective, it's, I think, different to what it used to be.
Yeah.
I think what Caitlin said, it does have its like plus and negatives, because I think it is a good way to practice and to give that child a bit of confidence to be able to read it, even if they do struggle. It still pushes them out of their comfort zones. It's a challenge for them. But I sometimes feel that it can be a little bit boring, especially if the class is quite big and the rest of the kids, they do clock off and they don't follow what is being read. So I think they could zone out because it's just too long.
Yeah, I hadn't actually thought about this personally, but when I started doing my TEFL course, one of the first things they said was, is obviously for adults. It's for teaching adults English, but this is not useful. It's not a very useful thing. If what you're trying to do is trying to get the fluency, like the sister was saying, when you're reading Quran, obviously you have to try and get the fluency out and that kind of thing. If that's what the purpose of the lesson is, that you're trying to get children to read fluently, then maybe you could do a little bit of this, but don't drag it on for half an hour. It's going to kill them to death. Okay, so we don't want to be, doing things that kids are going to be like, oh no, not this again. Okay, and the other thing is obviously why I started with what is reading. We have to find purpose in reading. We always say give children text so that they find purpose in reading. Okay, they have to understand, why am I reading this? Okay, so usually with the reading exercise, you might kind of give them like a question or something, like it depends on the level of the text. What is Fatima thinking, or what is Fatima feeling when she loses her dog, or whatever, or whatever. Give them a question. So then they read, and they're reading with interest. They're like, oh, I wonder what's going on. And, like sparks the interest, like, oh, was there a reason? Was there a reason why she was feeling like this? And then, give them a question like that. Go through the text. Let them read in their heads. We don't want to put kids on the spot, because there's always going to be kids who can read fluently and the kids that are just going to be struggling. I even still, although I've been teaching for 2 years, some of my students can read quite fluently, and others are not as fluent. They still will, and then they're going to feel the pressure of, everybody else reads faster than me, and that kind of thing. It's not about speed. It's about, can you read it and understand it? That's actually what the purpose is. Later on, when they get older, a bit more confident, then maybe they could be doing some kind of reading aloud exercises. So yes and no, but generally I would say steer away from reading around the class, and just for whatever reason, the teachers used to make us do those things when we were younger. Okay, what about this one? This is an easy one. Students should be presented with text that interests them.
I think that's good. That's correct. Will make them more interested and more engaged to the lesson. Maybe not all the lessons, obviously, because they might choose things even higher or lower than their level. But present them or like give them or teach them things that they're interested in or they want really to know about. It will make them more happy to learn and more interested.
Yeah. I think especially with boys, I don't want to stereotype. I have 2 girls and 2 boys on my own. I'm not going to stereotype, but the boys do tend to like to read about factual stuff. Could he read history books all day long? He loves to read history. But when you say, or read a fairy tale, it's like, I don't want to read a fairy tale, So boys especially, their interest has to be sparked a little bit. So if you've got an Arabic book about football, the boys are going to go for that. Give them a little bit of choice as well. I'll show you some of the books that we use. Give them a bit of choice in their reading material. If they're reading for pleasure, they have to find pleasure in that reading. Of course, some of the texts you're going to have to choose for them. If you're reading a text together, you're working on the text together, you're going to choose that one for them. But give them some scope to read something which is of interest to them as well. On this one, then, students should be able to write at the same level that they can read.
Definitely not.
I don't think, because sometimes people they can write more than they speak, or the opposite, or they write more than they read.
What is everybody? Some people are very quiet. Sister.
Well, I think writing would depend on the spelling, and this doesn't have that much connection to reading. So I wouldn't consider it like a very connecting thing to each other. No.
Okay.
They can read faster than they can write, especially with the younger ones, because they're still learning how to hold a pencil, but they can easily read the alphabet before, so you can read at a faster pace than you can write.
Yeah. Generally, reading comes way before writing. Generally, and also you can read much harder texts than you can write. If I ask my students to produce something like the book that they're reading. We're reading Qisas al-Nabiyyin, we're reading stories of the prophets in Arabic. That's what we're doing. We're doing that since year one. If I asked them to produce the level of the book that they wouldn't be able to. No way. They can't. This is an author. This is somebody skilled in Arabic who's written this. They can't write the same level as they can read. Okay, so the reading level can be a lot higher than their writing level, and we shouldn't expect them to be able to write the same level as what they're reading. Okay, so try and make that distinction when you're choosing. When you're reading to the children, it can be an even higher level. Okay, so the lowest level is probably their writing level, and then their own reading level, and then what reading level what you're reading to them. So for the 5 and 6 year olds, you might be reading a book to them. Okay, that can be a higher level than what they're able to read themselves. Okay, so yeah, bear that in mind. They will not be able to write the same level as they can read. Reading is obviously a much higher level. Okay. Next one. Okay, so I'm just going to share some of the reading materials that we have. Obviously, this is not an exhaustive list. So these are the Oxford Arabic Club readers. There are about 50 of these available. They are in 7 different levels. There's a green one as well. It's not in this picture. There's a green level which is higher than this. These are graded readers like you get in school, like Biff, Kip and Chipper. Biff, Chip and Kipper. You know the readers that you get at school. So you start with 3 words on a page, moving up to complete stories. Okay, so the green level, which is above this, is a couple of paragraphs on a page. Still lots of pictures, very child friendly. It is kind of geared towards probably. Well, actually, it could be for Arabs or non-Arabs, but it is geared towards very, very child friendly. I would suggest investing in this. Don't buy them separately. It's going to cost you a fortune. I can't remember where we got them all from, but you can get the whole set, 50 readers as a bundle. Okay. Now, what could you do if you had readers like this? What kind of activities could you base around having readers to use in the class?
Sorry, can you repeat again?
What kinds of activities? I mean, if you have reading books, what kind of activities could you base around these?
Maybe read the book and give me a brief about it, or give me what you understood. What's like, maybe write a bit. If it's a bit old, if the kids are a bit older, maybe give them the book, read it in like 2 days or however, and write in your words a brief about this story.
Also, I think the first step that you can do is like asking them to choose or to write the unfamiliar words that they need to translate.
Yeah. Okay, so identifying some vocab that they didn't already know. Yeah.
Maybe if you write if you, for example, أحب سلطة الفواكه, maybe have the chance to tell them like different types of فواكه in Arabic, or what's your favorite, give them questions regarding the story, like what kind of فواكه do you like, what's your favorite one, what colors, you can go like with like تفاحة حمراء, موزة صفراء and stuff like that.
Yeah, and that could be a very visual thing for younger kids. It could be that you just have pictures of fruit and they're just pointing to them and speaking it, so they're not having to write anything. Yeah, that's a good one. There's so many things you could do with these. For older kids, you could have even like comprehension questions.
Sister, if you don't mind, I have a question. When I was planning actually this year's lessons, we had in our curriculum, we had few stories, like can't remember the names, but for example, Ahmed في الحلاق أو Samira في السوق. So as preparing or writing the LO, the learning objective for the lesson, I was really struggling what
learning objective should I write down on the board before I start the lesson? Like, because when we're learning verbs or grammar, it would be easy, to write the LO. But with stories, I don't know. It shouldn't go with, for example, if we have salata, is it I'll be able or to be able to learn about vegetables or fruits, or it's more about to learn, for example, how to read, or can you just advise me regarding the LO?
Okay, so there's two different types. There's two different types of learning objectives with reading. So one is what vocabulary do I want the child to be able to use or understand, that kind of thing. So, for example, if you read that one, that fruit salad one, you could say the learning objective is to be able to name 5 fruits.
Okay.
Okay, but you could also have. I can't remember exactly what this book is about, but for example, that they will be able to use the fruits in a sentence, like "uhibbu al-mawza" or whatever it is, whatever the sentence is, that they will be able to express that they like something. Okay, so you will be able to whatever. I mean, the readers have kind of objectives of what they want to teach. Okay, so if it's very repetitive, it'll be like "uhibbu ummi," or "uhibbu abi," or "uhibbu akhi," or whatever. And then at the end of it, they will be able to say "I like" or "I love," and this will be their learning objective of what they want to get out of it. Sometimes you might not have a learning objective. Sometimes you might just say, right, here are the books. Let's go and have a read and see what you find. Okay, but if you're going to have one text where everybody's doing it, then I would say, what are the grammatical learning objectives, and what are the kind of vocabulary learning objectives that you want to get out of this? If you're going to progress it onto a few lessons, like for example, if you had the Very Hungry Caterpillar, like there's other books that you can get which are in Arabic. If you had the Very Hungry Caterpillar, you could go on this for 2 months with a 5-year-old, a class of 5-year-olds. Okay, you could do the colors, you could do the days of the week, you could do the fruits, you could do the life cycle of a caterpillar. You could do anything. There's so many things that you could do with this book. You could do it for 2 months, and then your objectives will be that I want them to be able to identify the 5 different fruits that the caterpillar eats, naming them, and also as I say, like using a verb, maybe like whichever verb is in there that you want them to be able to use, something like that.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I usually really struggle with writing the LO, because it's just, I find it, especially with Arabic. Now with Islamic, I teach Islamic studies as well. With Islamic studies, it's always straightforward, like this is the object and this is what you're going to learn about. But with Arabic, it's kind of tricky, because it's like there's, sometimes, lots of things going on, and you need really to identify what's exactly you're gonna like teach the kids, and I don't want to confuse them. So just like it's a bit tricky. But now you made it clear. Thank you for that.
I would say when you're choosing your text, you should be thinking, what grammar am I actually teaching just now, and then choose a text according to what grammar you're teaching.
We have already we have the text already there in our curriculum. So it just say some texts are very nice, and it's easy and straightforward, and some others they're just like very, I don't know, but it just like they're just maybe hard to write a learning objective for them.
Yeah, I struggle sometimes to write the learning objectives, but yeah, think about which grammar you're teaching. For example, I'll just give you one example. I had it on the slide anyway. When I was teaching Jumla Ismiya way back in first year, we learned Jumla Ismiya by itself, and then we did Jumla Ismiya with Inna, and then we did Jumla Ismiya with Laysa, and then we did Jumla Ismiya with Kana. And when we did Kana, making the predicate mansoob and all that kind of thing, I got this book, Dear Zoo. Okay, so Dear Zoo, I mean, I know my kids are older, but they absolutely loved it, right? So this is a preschool book, right, for 3-year-olds. It's a board book, but they loved it. They loved doing Dear Zoo. And if you're familiar with Dear Zoo, it was, the zoo sent me an elephant. It was too big. Okay, so it was too big. Kana kabirun jiddan. Okay, so we're learning all about kana and picking the next word, mansub. And then they made their own books, and I thought they're going to think that I'm asking them to baby that. They loved it. They loved this lesson. They were like 12, 13 people. So this is like a copy from my daughter's book. I was reading to her. So they had to write their own Dear Zoo books, choose some animals, and then they had to say, use some adjectives, but put it into a sentence with kana. So my daughter chose a bear. She put the word dub up there, and then she said kana thaqilan jiddan. Okay, so they're learning through practical examples. They've read the book, and now they're making their own, and they're doing the artwork. And never underestimate. And actually, with these books, the ones that showed like the Caterpillar and Dear Zoo and all these ones that have been translated into Arabic, you just go on the English sites and see what are the ideas. Go on Pinterest to tell you what are the ideas for lessons from these, and just steal them from there. Don't reinvent anything. Just steal other people's ideas. I've taught this very lesson to primary 2 when I was working as a teacher. I've taught this to primary 2, and then I did it with my 12-year-olds in Arabic. Okay, so I've done this in English, and I've done it in Arabic as well. So just making your own Dear Zoo book with lift the flaps, and kids love it. Okay? And obviously, depending on the age of the child, it might take a bit longer to do. Okay, so that's another idea. This book, absolute must. You have to have this book. It's called The First 1,000 Words in Arabic. I don't know if you're all familiar with this. This is made by Osborne. They do the same book for all languages. So you get a double page like this with lots of pictures in it and all the words around the side. Okay, so you can do spotting games with younger kids. If you get a group of 5, they can look and who can find Nauras, and then they have to look around and see what is Nauras, and then they look on the page and find it. I've used this also as a kind of like for a writing activity. So a trip to the seaside. Now instead of they're saying, Miss, how do you say sandcastle, and how do you say boat, and how do you say this? You give them the photocopy of the page and give it to them. And then they've got all the vocab they need. And then they're just thinking about their grammar then. They're just thinking about how am I going to say, I sailed on a boat, and I went to the seaside, and I did this, and I ate an ice cream. All the words are available. This is a fantastic book. It's not Fusha, obviously. This is a lot of this modern standard Arabic. But if you're going to do topics like going to the seaside, then there's like in the garden, in the house, and then there's lists of adjectives, and there's opposites, and there's all sorts of good pages in this book. I've used this with my students as well. Okay, so that's more for slightly younger kids, starting from younger kids. These are the books. I don't know which sisters are teaching which levels, but these are the books that I'm using with my teenagers now. Primarily this book here, This is Nabi. Honestly, Sarah will tell you, I rant and rave about this book. I think it's absolutely fantastic. It's a graded reader. Okay, it's a graded reader. It starts off extremely simple. Okay, so you could start this with 10-year-olds. There's not that many pictures in it, so I wouldn't recommend it for the kind of younger ones, unless you're reading to them. You could read it to the younger kids. It starts off really, really simple, very simple Arabic, repetitive language, just like a reader would be, repetitive language, and it builds up, so it gets more and more difficult as it goes on. So it starts off with the story of Ibrahim alayhi salam. We did that in year 1. I started this book after three months of Arabic teaching. Okay, so they learned like Jumla Ismiya, and they learned like adjectives and idafas and things like that. And then we went on straight onto this book. So they did Ibrahim in year 1. We did Yusuf alayhi salam in year 2. And now we're on to the story of Prophet Nuh. Okay, and the Arabic now is a lot harder than it was in year 1. So it's fantastic. It's written by a non-Arab who obviously knows what struggles non-Arabs are going to have in learning Arabic. It's really, really, I really recommend this book. 40 حديثاً لتعليم اللغة العربية والتربية النبوية. This is also very good. I use this with my students. This is written by another Indian scholar, obviously not Arab either. 40 hadiths to learn the Arabic language and the prophetic education. Okay, so this is really good. You have a short hadith on the page. It goes through each word. What does it mean? And then it has questions, fill in the blanks, use this word in a sentence. It's got all the activities already in it. As I say, this is kind of for older kids though. Okay, and the third one, which is probably the hardest of these three, al-qira'a rashida. This is like kind of longer texts. That text I showed you from the comprehension paper, it came from this book. Okay, so this is kind of longer text. So once your student's a bit more confident, some of your kind of primary 6, 7 students might be able to read some of this and give some poetry in there as well. And it's really nice. These books are really cheap. You can buy them for like £6, £7 each, or you might be able to get a deal if you're going to get them for lots of students. It's Fusha, it's pure Fusha, and it's obviously, if it's written by people who learned Arabic as a second language as well.
I noticed the text you showed us before, it's all with the harakat. So is it intentionally you put the harakat for the kids to read?
Yes. I did that more for my slightly less able students, because the other ones can read a lot without the harakat. Again, with these books, especially like Qisas an-Nabiyyin, it will start off with all the harakas on, and then gradually it will take them off. So towards the end of this book, things like min and fi, they've started taking off the harakas already, and then as you get further on, they start taking off more harakas, because as your reading improves, you will not need the harakat. I do insist on my students writing the end haraka on everything, because I need to know that they know which case it is. Is it mansoob and marfu', and they have to put on the harakas on the end. The middle ones I'm not as bothered anymore. Maybe with the verbs a little bit, but with the nouns I'm interested that they put on the haraka at the end, so that I know that they understand which case the word is in. Okay, so that's reading. Listening. Now, listening I find is always, you have to really think about, how am I going to have listening skills incorporated into my lesson. Some people are really good at this, obviously not my forte. Now, you could have lessons that are just listening. The teachers who are doing GCSE Arabic, or the older kids, you probably will have like extracts that you've got on CD or on audio files or whatever that you're going to be doing with your students. But even with the younger ones, you can play some listening games, and you can play some listening activities that can help their listening skills. Okay, it's a different kind of skill to reading, because you're having to really concentrate on what somebody is saying. So here are some of the ideas that I've used in my class. I went to the moon and took with me. This is a good game. So one person starts off and they say, سافرت إلى القمر وأخذت معي قلما or whatever. And then the next person, they have to say سافرت إلى القمر وأخذت معي كتابا وقلما. So they have to remember what the other person has said, and it gets longer and longer, and the list gets longer and longer, and it's like that memory, it's that listening, it's that concentration of who said what and which order was it in, and that kind of thing. So that's quite a good kind of listening activity. You can do this with very young children. So that's one possibility. Sharing a book together and asking children to answer a question about the story, talk about what's happening, that kind of thing. So that sharing a book together can also be a kind of listening exercise. You could give them a few questions before you even start. Okay, what does Fatima find in the garden? Okay, and then you read the story, and then they're listening out for that bit of information, but they have to listen to the whole story in order to get what is it that she found, that kind of thing. This is a good one that I've done with my students quite a lot. Ask your student, this is for obviously when they can write a little bit, ask your students to write about an object, a place, or a person, and then they present it to the class. There's a bit of speaking and a bit of listening. And then everyone else has to guess what they are, where they are, or who they are. Okay? So, for example, you could provide some pictures. So when I did Where Am I provided this as a sort of like stimulus or whatever you like. And then somebody might say, if you chose, for example, the palace, right? You might say, أنا بناية كبيرة ويسكن Al-Sofia, Al-Maliku, Al-Amiratu, or whatever. You could have some clues, and then people have to listen really carefully and think which one is it. Okay, so this is a nice listening exercise that you could do. You could do it with objects. You could do it with people. We did it with prophets. Obviously, you wouldn't say that you were the prophet yourself, but you'd say, بنى هذا النبي الكعبة مع أبيه. Okay, this prophet built the Kaaba with his father. Who's that? And then people guess. Okay, so this is about listening to other people, getting the information, and then guessing, having a guessing. Okay, so these are just ideas of making your lessons more fun and more accessible. The last thing you want to do is bore people to death. And if it's a competition, competitions always work. I'm going to be talking about games in a little while, using games in your lessons as well. Now, if you've got older children and you're doing a listening exercise, this is just the format that I've taken from my TEFL course. Okay, so this is a kind of standard format of how to do a listening exercise. So the first thing you would do is you would introduce a topic. What is the topic of this lesson? Don't just turn the audio file on and say, listen to this. Say, what is this topic about? Is it an airport what do you call it? An airport announcement? Is it train timetable information? Is it two people talking about the weather? Is it what? Just tell the students what it is that this extract is about. Any vocabulary that they might need to know. Okay, so for example, if you're doing the airport one, they need to know the word terminal, so they're not sitting there thinking, I don't know what they're talking about. Okay, so they need to know the word terminal. Let's put it up on the board. The basic vocab that they will need in order to understand this. Now, in the first listening, you would give them one piece of information to listen out for. Okay, so which terminal is the flight to France leaving from? Okay, that's the only piece of information they're going to be listening out for. They will listen to the whole extract, and then they're going to give some feedback on, did you get the right information? Which terminal was it? That kind of thing. And then you will give kind of more questions to answer, and let them listen to the extract again. And then give feedback again on what answers they got. Now, after you've done the listening exercise, what you can do is you can use the same scenario in a kind of role play exercise. Okay, so you're converting your listening skills into speaking skills. Okay, so the students might take turns being the person giving the announcements, or talking about the weather, or whatever the extract was about. They might work in small groups, like in groups of 3 or something. Let's practice some of this vocabulary or these kind of expressions that we've just heard. Let's make up a little role play. I'm going to be talking about speaking in a minute, but you could bounce off ideas from the listening to do a different type of activity as well. Okay, so what are the possible things that you need to consider when you're doing a listening exercise or a listening lesson?
The quality of the audio file, whatever it's at on your computer or CD, to make sure that it's clear, and also that considering your pupils' level of knowledge in Arabic, like it shouldn't be too much new vocabulary for them, because then they will not be motivated to listen if they're already the first sentence and they didn't understand anything, or if it's too fast, people are speaking too fast, too quickly. That's demotivating as well.
Okay, so the level of content and the speed, yeah.
With testing, open the CD and let the children clarify. Explain. Is it clear to hear? Is the sound, is the voice all right? It's taking their idea at the start. Then I can change things before I play it, and ask each one to.
Yeah, is it clear? Is the volume okay? So we've got technical issues with audio, and as I say, I really don't like technology. at all, but we have to use these things, right? And also the level of anything else? Somebody was mentioning before the different dialects that Arabs speak. Okay, now, yeah?
Hi. Sorry. I think, yeah, with the different, because, for example, if we are doing the GCSEs exam or the A levels, there more would be with Fushat and without dialogue. So for student, again, for students who are from different countries.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, see where the extract is coming from. Accents, people speak in accents, and people speak in their dialects. I mean, when I was learning Arabic, there was an Algerian sister there. When she was in the lesson, obviously everything's Fusha. When she's speaking to me, everything Fusha because I didn't speak any other dialects. She spoke to her mum on the phone, and then she came off and she carried on speaking in her Algerian Arabic. Wallahi, I understood absolutely nothing. I was like, you better switch back to the Arabic I know. I have no idea what you said. Okay, because A, the speed, and B, the accent, C, the dialect. Honestly, I had no idea. Okay, so bear in mind that obviously there are different accents that the children may not be. If they're used to you saying, Al-baytu kabirun, and then somebody on the extract is, Al-baytu kabirun, they're not going to catch it. They're not going to catch it if it's too fast. It needs to be nice and slow, and the accent has to be very, very clear. Background noise as well. Obviously, if this is a natural recording and there's seagulls or there's something in the background, bear in mind that there's background noise, and also their own background noise as well. Okay, so we need to remind them, if everybody's going to hear this properly, there can be no shuffling around and unzipping your pencil cases. There's no need for that. Everybody, hands on your desk and no fiddling and fidgeting and all that background noise, because we have to be able to hear it properly, and obviously the speed of the speaker as well. Okay. So how is a reading exercise easier than a listening one? Okay, so these are our two receptive skills, reading and listening. How is reading easier than listening?
It has visual support as well.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, for a lot of learners, visual support is really what they're looking for. Whereas like me, for example, myself, my oral Arabic is horrible. When I'm listening to people speaking, I actually have to visualize the words, the written words in my head in order to be able to understand what they're saying. If they're just saying it like that and I do not visualize the words, then I don't understand what they're saying. Whereas if I write it in my head and I see the words, then I'm like, yeah, okay, you said that. So I think visual support is, essential for most learners.
For me, when I was learning English, it was opposite than Sister Caitlin. I was more okay with the listening than the reading, because how we used to watch, watch maybe the TV with English. So I'm really familiar with the words and hearing them, but I wasn't really familiar reading them. So the listening was very easier than reading for me. Reading, it was the hard part.
Okay.
But it's true, like when you see the words, maybe it will be easier for you just to, and it's with the reading, for example, when you have paper, the words are in there, so you can go and read them again if you didn't know the meaning in the first time. But with listening, it's just hard. If it goes if it finished, then you can't really go back. I've done IELTS exam before, and the listening, even I was better with listening, but it was just like if it finished, then you don't have another chance. That was the hard part.
Yeah. If you have the reading text there, you can go back as many times as you like. Go back, I don't remember what that person's name was. Let me just go back and check. If I go back to the previous slide, there are no accents. There is no speed of the speaker. You're reading at your own pace, and there's no background noise. I mean, all these three things that we said we had to look out for when we were doing listening things, they don't exist in reading. Okay, and also that you can go back as many times as you want and read it in your own pace, at your own speed, and try and absorb all the information. There's also not just the visual of the words, but if you've got the colourful books with the pictures in them, there's pictures as well, and the pictures can help. Okay. Right, on to speaking then. Okay, so bouncing off listening, we're going on to now speaking. Now have a look at what I've written here. Which of these do you think best describes a good speaking lesson in an intermediate class, you know, a class of maybe 8, 9-year-olds who've done a reasonable amount of language, who can speak a little bit? Which one of these three do you think is the best? There's no right and wrong answer. Which one do you think? Okay, so you largely chose 2. After presenting some material, get students to work in groups and have a go at saying something about the topic. One person from each group could write down some ideas to present to the class. Okay, so that's the one you chose. What was wrong with number 1? What could potentially, it's not completely wrong, it's not a completely bad idea, but what is the one thing that's really not necessarily appropriate for a speaking lesson from number 1?
If the aim is to provide speaking exercises, then I mean it's not bad to check the script for grammar mistakes and learn about grammar, but that's not really the aim of the lesson.
So the aim is not pointing out grammatical mistakes. If you went around everybody's scripts and you said, you're supposed to use this preposition here, and you were meant to say this here, and you were meant to, meant to do this, and what's going to happen to your student?
They got demotivated again. Like, I better not write anything. Yeah.
They're going to zip their mouth. They're not going to say anything. They're going to be like, they're going to be so scared of saying something which is wrong, they're going to say nothing at all. Okay? Speaking lessons are meant to be where they get an opportunity to express themselves. When I speak English, and English is my first language, when I speak English, I don't always speak with proper grammar. It's not absolutely necessary for me to constantly be checking my grammar when I'm speaking English. Why would I need to do that? Because I can make myself understood. Okay? For example, if somebody said, put the words in the wrong order, for example. Okay, we would still understand what they were saying. Okay, so checking for grammatical mistakes in a speaking lesson, and as you're going around the classroom listening to them, and you can't be saying, oh no, say it like this, and no, you should be saying. It doesn't matter. What you want the children to do is actually have the confidence to speak. Okay, and making little grammatical mistakes is not going to make us not be able to understand them. Okay, it's much more important to get their confidence and get them to be able to just say something at least. Okay, so that's what probably the main thing about number 1 that I would steer away from. What about number 3?
That's a very traditional way for Arabs to learn about their language as well. When we're talking about, not always what they have written, but the whole idea behind muallaqat and the poets learning by heart the poems of the previous poets, and actually grammar coming after that, the Arabic grammar having come from the way the poems not written, but I mean they were said. So it is because we are using this and this preposition here because that this poet said this or that poet said that. It's actually a very good way of learning how to use Arabic, but then that's definitely not for an intermediate level. I would say that's more like for advanced pupils to be able to invest themselves so much as to memorize a whole piece of writing by heart.
But I think number 3 is more of a writing exercise, and it's absolutely fine to do this, by the way. So I would ask my students, for example, I may actually will ask them to do this, is to write a composition on Prophet Yusuf, because they know everything about him and all the vocab that they need. Write a composition of Prophet Yusuf and then present it to the class. That's fine, but that's a writing exercise. And there I would go in and I would help them with their grammar, and I would help them to form their sentences properly. When we're talking about a speaking lesson, when you want kids to just open up and speak and be confident in speaking, it's less about the grammar and less about getting it exactly right, and more about just being able to express yourself. So if you present some material, for example, you've talked about going to the market, for example. You've read a book about going to the market. You've talked about the different types of shops that you might find there. Get your students into groups, and then you could do like role play, or you could just talk about it. Even just say, why do you like the market? And I like it because there's so many different types of stalls, whatever they're going to say. But the main thing is that they're just saying something. They're using the vocab and the grammar that they know, and they're just trying to say something. And if it's a little bit wrong, it doesn't really matter. Okay, and then they can come and maybe present to the class at the end, whoever feels confident in doing that. When I've said working in groups, sometimes children are not obviously that excited about standing up in front of the whole class. In fact, they'll probably be like, no, thank you, I don't want to do that. But you will have some students who are willing to do that. Scatter them between the groups, so that you know that if you need to present it at the end, that you've got somebody who's confident enough to do that. But don't expect everybody to be able to speak in front of the whole class. I certainly wasn't that confident to do that when I was younger. So I mean, I wouldn't expect younger kids to necessarily be able to do it. But within a small group of 3 or 4, why not? No problem.
Sister, here with differentiation, like if you have like you're doing differentiation with your the tasks that you give the student. For example, if you're talking about, let's say, fruit, or colors, as we were saying, would you put like when you're creating the groups, would you put them randomly, or put like some high with some a bit low, or like leave the groups as they are, like high, medium, and low, and see how they're working? What would you do?
It depends which activity you're doing. I think if you
like the speaking that we were talking about now.
I would do mixed ability, but I would try and understand the characters in the class, because it's not just about ability, it's about, is one person going to dominate?
Yeah.
Now, if it had a dominating character, like a boy who wants to take over the world and do everything himself, and then you put him in with 3 timid little girls, I mean, it's not going to work. It's not going to work. So understand the characters and do a mixed ability. If you wanted to kind of differentiate a little bit, you could at some point give that higher ability group the opportunity to do something which is at a different level, in which case you might have 3 different activities, or maybe 2 different activities, and leave them to be a bit independent. Say, I'm going to leave you to this now because I can trust that you can get on with this, and I'm going to be working with this group over here.
Okay.
So sometimes
because this problem usually happens when you have, for example, a native Arab speakers and who know, like, especially with speaking, they know probably how to speak, and with the students who are not, the Arabic is their second language, or they don't really speak Arabic that much. So if you put them together, the Arab one would do most of the work, so the other person wouldn't really do that much. And if you put them separate, or do 2 different groups, they will like be less confident, because and I hear them saying that, oh, we're not gonna, if we have like competition, I'll hear them saying, oh, we're not gonna win because they're Arab, they know much better and stuff. So this is really like a problem. I don't, in this situation, I don't really know what I'm supposed to do, just like what's the best thing to do.
But I think that's your job as facilitator then, to go around the groups and make sure that people are contributing and people are taking part, and asking the other less vocal members of the group, what do you think, or that kind of thing, and to have rules as well. You have to have rules about this kind of stuff. If we're going to be having discussion groups where it's a bit more rowdy and a bit more kind of free flow and all that kind of thing, that there has to be rules. You have to respect other people's rights to speak. You have to respect your other group members. I mean, even with my students, none of them are Arabs, but there is a difference between, say, for example, my daughter, because she did Arabic before she came to my class, so she knew a bit more, and the students that came at the beginning when I started teaching, there's a big difference between them. There's a difference between their levels and that kind of thing. So I have to make sure sometimes that somebody's not really dominating too much. purpose of speaking lessons is to allow students to practice what they've learned. It's a practicing exercise. They've learned some vocabulary, some expressions, just for them to be able to use it. Provide opportunities to express ideas. Okay, so when you get into kind of higher classes, you might be talking about climate change or something, and if you get to really high levels, maybe an A level or something, expressing ideas and opinions. Increase their confidence. Okay, it's all about the confidence. It's all about are they able to not have that fear. Okay, we need to get that fear out of them. That it's okay, just have a go, just have a try. Who cares if it's wrong? It doesn't matter. And sometimes, if you, as a teacher, you make a mistake on purpose and say, "Oh, absolutely," just make it look like, I'm human as well, and sometimes I make a mistake. Okay, and I do, because when I speak, I do make mistakes. Because, as I say, it's not my language. Sometimes I make a mistake, and I say, "Oh, sorry, I made a mistake there. I should have said this." It doesn't matter. So we're human beings, and we're all in this together. Okay, so it's about increasing the confidence, not correcting the grammar. Okay, as tempting as it may be, it can be so tempting. And when I'm going around, I'm like, I just have to just put my hand on my mouth, make sure I'm not interfering with things, because I don't want them to not feel confident. I have some very shy students in my class, very when I say shy, I mean like exceptionally shy, and trying to get them out of their shells in a language lesson is almost impossible. But if I start saying, "Oh, this is wrong," then they're just going to clam up altogether and not say anything. Okay, and we don't want to be hanging over them as well, waiting for opportunities. Just relax in the speaking lesson. Just give them the opportunity to just as I say, free flow, just express your ideas, and let's have a chat about this, and let's see where it gets us. Okay. Okay, last one of the 4 skills now is obviously writing. I've just written a few things. Obviously, writing I could do a 6-hour presentation on writing alone. I love writing, and I love teaching writing in English and in Arabic. But I'll just give a few pointers. There are so many things that you could do. There are so many. I'm sure if you brainstormed them, there are so many different. For example, if you read a book together and there was a villain character, you could make a wanted poster, and then you could describe the person that's wanted. You could be writing letters. You could be writing advertisement, write a postcard. I mean, once they get to GCSE, they'll be doing all this stuff as well. It's not just about translate these sentences or write a small story. There's so many things you can do. Again, you can Google these writing ideas for 5-year-olds, writing ideas for 6-year-olds, and just take it into Arabic and do an Arabic lesson. These are just a few things I just wanted to note. The transition between being able to read and being able to write is not necessarily as straightforward as we might think. Okay, so we have to take into consideration that children at age 5 might not be ready to write necessarily. What we do in primary schools is that we use sand and we use shaving foam and get them to do it with their finger, get the flow, even just transitioning from left to right to right to left. It's a huge thing. At school they're learning how to write English, and then all of a sudden you're saying, "No, actually go on the other side." My 5-year-old sometimes still goes like that, and I'm like, "No, it's Arabic. We're going like this. Read your letters like this," but he's going backwards. Okay, it's a big transition. It's a huge transition. If you ever ask some converts, some people who to convert to Islam, like my mum is a convert as well. You ask them then they're like, "Oh, and things like we eat with our right hand and we wash our backsides with our left hand." And for converts coming into they're like, "Oh, I keep on forgetting and putting my left hand forward to eat food," and it's because some things are just natural. It's just the natural thing that we do. But if you've never learned it, then it can take a bit of time to kind of get used to. And as I say, you're going from left to right and then right to left is it's a big transition. All small progressions that kids make, celebrate them. Okay, I can't emphasize enough how to celebrate and find good things to celebrate about every single child, even if they're just basically not achieving very much at all. Find something to celebrate about their writing. Okay. Oh, you couldn't do that last week. You can do it this week. It's worth celebrating, and we'll make a big deal out of it. And as I say, very young children can start learning in sand. You can have sand trays. I don't know what facilities you have, but you could have like sand trays where they can just do their letters and joining letters together. Writing, I think, maybe should not be as much of an emphasis in the very first year. Your primary one kids, they're going to struggle with, maybe possibly struggle with writing. So just step by step, and they'll get there eventually. And remember that a child's understanding will be far greater than what they can produce. Okay, so for example, Jane Austen and all these classical writers. I mean, we can read them, but we can't produce things like that. Okay, so remember the difference between your reading level and your writing level, which I've already mentioned. The last thing I wanted to mention about writing is that handwriting lessons and writing lessons are two different things. Okay, so as I said, with reading and everything else, there's the core skills of this is how we write, and then there's the creative skills where we're going to think about what we're going to write about and how we're going to describe this, and that's more the kind of creative side. And I would say do them separately. If your class as a whole needs to improve their handwriting, you have a handwriting element in your lesson. Don't turn writing lessons into handwriting lessons. Like you say, okay, we're going to write about a haunted house, and they start writing me like, oh, you didn't write your file properly. That's not what we do, right? We separate the two. Handwriting is separate because that's just a core skills thing that they need to learn, and the creative writing lessons should be something which is done separately, where you're discussing ideas, you're getting excited about it. You need to be excited about their writing. So planning your teaching, I think some of you did a session with my sister about lesson plans and things like that. I'm not sure if some of you went to that as well. So probably talked about this kind of stuff already. So just have a quick look at that. What grammar are you going to cover? What topics are you going to cover? Now, it's important that you have grammar going on as well as topics. Okay, not just that you're learning loads of vocab and they don't know what to do with it. You need to know what your grammar is that you're going to be doing. Are you going to be doing jumla ismiya? Are you going to be using verbs and objects? Are you going to be what is it that you're trying to achieve? And what topics are you going to incorporate into that? It's not two separate things. Do them both together. What activities could you do to learn the grammar with the vocab at the same time? Resources. What resources do you need? What homework are you going to be sending home? I'll talk about homework at the end. And also, how will you assess your children? How are you going to assess? Does my student understand this concept? Have I taught it in a way that they've understood? Do I need to give any extra activities or extra homework that will help them to understand this? So you have to have a kind of assessment process that's ongoing, week by week, where you're just writing a few notes about this child did this week, and this child didn't understand this, and I need to do a recap lesson on this at some point. That kind of ongoing assessment is really, really important. Okay, so when you start your lessons, I would suggest that you always start with a warmer. Okay, so a warm-up activity that gets people going. Okay, not just sit down, get your books out, start writing. They're not going to be excited about coming to Arabic if you're not going to do a warmer activity. Warmers really get the juices flowing. They get the ideas, the creativity. You can introduce a new topic. You can just have fun. I mean, it could just be a fun element. It could be just they're not learning anything new. They're just having a bit of fun, running about the classroom. I don't know with the COVID guidelines whether you're allowed to run about or anything anymore, but you could be running about the classroom. You could literally just be doing something active. You could be doing something in pairs. You could be doing anything. I've just given a few ideas of things that I've used with my class. Find someone so this could be like you're practicing some of your grammar. Share that with you, but anyway. So you might have we did this at the TEFL course as well with adults. So you might have find somebody who's traveled to Africa, find someone who's eaten sharks, find someone who was born in another country, find someone who's done this, and it could be all past tense verbs that you're practicing. Okay, so everything in there is in the past tense. They go around, they talk to each other. Have you been to Africa? Have you eaten this? And they're just talking to each other, chatting to each other, and then they're just ticking off and they're writing the names on the piece of paper. This is a fantastic activity. I've done it a number of times. Kids who kind of intermediate level, they could deal with this. Easier types of things, if you've been doing colors, find something red, find something green, and just point to to it or touch it or go and run to it or that kind of thing, just to practice their colours. Alif to ya, you could do find a word for every letter of the alphabet, find verbs for every letter of the alphabet, work in a little group, work in pairs, whatever you want to do. You could have word association games, so I say qalamun and the next person says kitabun and the next person says balibun and the next person says madrasatun, and you have words and something that links all the words together. Put some letters on the board, see how many words you can make out of them. Something just to get their creative juices going. If you Google TEFL is teaching English as a foreign language. TEFL warm-up activities. You're going to get pages and pages of these things. Okay, these are just ones that I've used with my class. Some of them obviously not suitable for kids, but plenty there that you can just look up. Always have a warm-up activity. Okay, in terms of your actual lesson, I would say always give plenty of time to practice new concepts in a variety of ways, both in class and for homework. Okay, as I say, we'll talk about homework later, but give enough time. Don't just say, okay, that's it. I've taught idafas now. I'm not gonna look at it. No, you need to incorporate it into your lesson. You need to, next topic we're doing, okay, let's go and do idafas again and bring it into our sentences for this, and and just carry on. And then maybe one day just do a sort of random activity and say, right, we're practicing idafas today, and this is what we're going to do. Lots and lots of practice, lots and lots of activities and ideas, and send some homework home as well. I'm a big advocate of sending homework home, especially when when the Sister Amal was saying that you've only got them twice a week. They might have 4 or 5 days in between lessons. Okay, that's too much. When you're learning a language, it's too much. You need to have some point in between the lessons where they're sitting down and thinking about Arabic at least for 5 minutes or 10 minutes. Okay, have clear objectives for what grammar your students are learning. Okay, so rather than just saying, oh, students will be learning the names of the colours, what exactly will they be able to do with that information? Okay, so for example, students will be able to use 10 colours to express in a sentence what colour something is. For example, abaytu ahmaru, or something like that. That could be as simple as that. Or obviously with older kids, there might be something a bit more complicated. Be aware of attention spans, as I mentioned this at the beginning. Not to spend too long on one activity. You don't want to bore them to death. And also to have a variety of activities to teach the same concept. Remember, some kids learn by listening, some kids learn by reading, some kids learn by physical, the younger kids, they need some physical activities. So if you're teaching them car and house and man, why don't you have like a car and all these objects, have a big box of objects that you're teaching them. Okay, and then play some games, play Kim's game where you put them all in a tray, cover it with a tea towel, and then they look at it and then cover it with a tea towel and then take one away and then they have to see which one is missing. That just actual physical things that they can touch and hold, or which one starts with letter sin, put it in the sin pile, put it over here, which one starts with fa, we'll put it over here, put them into groups. I mean, honestly, you could do like 1,000,001 different activities. Just Google and if you need any ideas, Google language activities for children. Have a mixture of teacher-led instruction, group work, and individual work. You're probably all sick of listening to my voice, and your students might end up being sick of listening to your voice as well for whatever reason, right? They need some time to talk to each other, and they need some quiet time to do some individual work as well. Sharing your learning objectives, it sounds like you're already doing that. It's important that they know what is being expected of them. And the last thing is make some cross-curricular links, okay? So if you're teaching the Quran lesson, Islamic studies lesson, and the Arabic lesson, fantastic. I mean, you can start incorporating some Arabic language into your Islamic studies and into your Quran. Oh look, remember we learned the verb qala, and oh look, there's qala in our surah that we're memorizing. Okay, just pick out what do we think this means, and like make links between. I'm sure you're doing this anyway. I just thought I'd mention it anyway. When I was learning Arabic, we were doing Sirah as well. We were learning Sirah Nabawiyah. The teacher started off in English with maybe like 10 Arabic words. And then in the next lesson, maybe it was 20. And then the next lesson, maybe it was 30. And at the end of the year, we were learning Sirah in Arabic. Okay, so this kind of gradual approach of just sprinkling in a few Arabic words here and there will get them kind of like used to using the words and seeing the links between them. Okay, using games. I love using games in my lessons, and my kids are like, "Are we having any games today?" The first thing they ask me when we come to lesson, "Are we having any games today?" And if it's no, it's like, oh, you know, you just you just kill the spirit straight away, right? So you need to have some games in your lessons. These can be like I Spy, Hangman, all the kind of like very, very simple games. You don't need to prepare for them, just turn up and do them. And as I say, don't need to reinvent the wheel. If there's a game out there, just use it. So have a look at the next few slides. These are games that I've used in my Arabic lessons. Twister. Fantastic, right? You're learning about colors. You're learning about left and right. Here you go. Here's an activity. I just separate the girls and boys. Even my 12, 13, 14-year-olds love playing Twister. I have them all playing Twister. We also have, at the end of term, we have a games day, where it's just games. It's all Arabic games. We just get all the games out that we've learned through the term. They just have a games day. Okay. So if you're learning colors and that kind of stuff, so I made this is my Twister spinny wheel thing, and I just fit it into the actual thing that came with the box. So we've got left foot, right foot, and left hand, right hand, and then there you go, new game in Arabic. Guess Who. This is fantastic. My kids love playing Guess Who. If you're not familiar with Guess Who, basically you choose a character, you choose one of the pictures. The other person asks you questions. Have they got black hair? Have they got blue eyes? And all you're allowed to say is yes or no. So this is good for what kind of activity? What kind of subjects is this good for?
Body parts, adjectives.
Yeah. Adjectives, body parts. Do they have? It's a grammatical structure. Do they have? So this is something that they can be practicing. Yeah, so we played Guess Who in the classroom a number of times. It always comes out at the end of term. And then obviously I've been teaching online since March. We've not been allowed in the mosque since March. So I found this picture. So now I can play online. We don't need to have any excuses about it. So I've got this picture now. We all play online, and then we just cross them off with the annotate function. It works, right? So then it's a fun activity that they can do. They're practicing some grammar and vocab without even knowing it. Dominoes, again, if you're doing your numbers, dominoes is a good one. I've created my own number dominoes. So here I have the symbol for the number, the word for the number, and the number of dots as well. So we play Arabic dominoes. You could laminate. I made this 15 minutes before a lesson one time, so you could laminate them and then you can use them over and over again.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
Lots of different ideas. As I say, if it's already been invented, don't need to reinvent it. So that's games that you can, honestly, the sky's the limit, honestly. It's just, there's so many things that you could do, and it will just take 5 minutes here, 10 minutes there. If your kids are getting a bit restless, let's have a game of Hangman. Okay, and then we'll just get everybody focused again, and then you can carry on. Using multimedia. Okay, I hate technology, but since March I've had to get to grips with all this. So my 14-year-old daughter has been teaching me how to set up Kahoot and Quizlet. If you're not familiar with these things, get familiar with them. I don't think I have actually got time to show you. But Quizlet, honestly, from 7+, my 8 and 9-year-olds are also using Quizlet for their Arabic, they're using it for their English vocab, they're using it for everything. Quizlet's fantastic. They can use it in their own time. You just create a set of words. So basically you type in, like, if they're learning colors, you put Ahmad, and then on the other side, it's like a what are they called? Those cards, those study cards. So you have the Arabic on one side, the English on the other side. They can practice it online. They can play games. They can do catch the asteroid before it reaches the Earth and all that kind of stuff. You can also use Quizlet in your classroom with something called Quizlet Live, but they need a device. So the younger kids maybe not, but the older kids, they need a device, and then they play against each other. They can be in teams, and they're just trying to match words or sentences even to their meanings and that kind of thing. The kids love it. And the first thing my son asks his Arabic teacher is, are we doing Quizlet today? Okay, so Quizlet's amazing. Even my son, who has no concentration whatsoever, he enjoys Quizlet. Kahoot, again, you need a device for it. Kahoot it was my best discovery of the year. So again, you can do kind of like quizzes and things like that. We practice all sorts on there. I put in like information about the Prophet. Is this true or false? They've got like put things in the right order and that kind of thing. It's lively, it's colourful, it's child friendly. So have a go. You can get free versions of these. I paid subscription for Kahoot, so you get more things that you can use.
Do you play them in the class during the class?
Yeah, Kahoot, you play in the class. If you've got older kids and they've got a device, you can play. They need to be able to see your question on your screen, and they need to have their device where they're selecting their answers. So
I found this World site, and there's so many games you can play, and it's easy to learn if you go on YouTube and try to find how to use these games or how to make these games. It's really easy and it's interesting, but we're still working on the next step, which is communication, how I do it with the kids during the class time. I can send it to the kids to play it in their time at home, but it won't be as fun as if you play it all at the same time in class. So you see the scores and things. But, hopefully we will learn better next time.
Yeah, Kahoot's good. It's very easy to use, very, very simple. If your kids they don't obviously need their own phone, but from what I understand, the older kids are all online at the moment anyway. You can actually, if you can split screen, if they're using a laptop or something, you can split screen and see both at the same time, and then you can actually play on one device. It's just on a phone you can't do it because it's too small. But you could try and incorporate some of these things. My kids love playing Kahoot. It makes it more fun. It makes it more, and it's timed as well. It's a timed thing, so they're all getting like, what is it? And they're trying to get on the podium. I think there's a podium at the end, third place, second place, first place, and it's a bit of competitiveness and a bit of fun too. Make it more enjoyable. Homework, as I say, I want to mention. I've not got much time. It's important that you give homework. The purpose of homework is to kind of just recap everything that you've done in class. It shouldn't be new stuff necessarily. It's mostly just to practice what you've done in class. And as I say, if you've got like a 4 or 5 day gap between lessons, then they've got some time in the week where they're going to sit down and think about Arabic. Okay, so I would suggest that you give homework every week. It's up to yourselves. Maybe the younger ones not so much, but the older ones definitely. Give them some homework. Even if it's just a matching sheet, they could just do a matching.
How do you motivate your pupils to do their homework? Because the thing that we've had with FLA is, first of all, we've always tried to prioritize Quran homework, their memorization and recitation. And a lot of parents, they actually just bluntly come out and say, right, my child is not going to do any homework because I'm sending my child 10 hours every week to FLA, so that should be enough. So even for Quran, for memorization, it's hard. So we've just kind of said to the teachers, like, let's prioritize Quran. We can give to elder children from time to time homework in Arabic and Islamic studies, but it's not that we don't want to give homework and that we don't think that it's valuable. It would be very valuable, but how to motivate the pupils and actually, more even than the pupils, their parents, that they would actually do this homework. Because then afterwards you give homework, some of the pupils will come in and the homework is done, and you can see that those pupils actually advance more because they get this extra time with them, even if it's 10 minutes, this extra help from the parents. It is so huge. How do you motivate them to do that homework?
Well, as you say, I mean, 10 minutes, 15 minutes is fine. It's not that you have to go and write an essay about this. It doesn't have to be too much, and it's just revision. So they don't need to. I'm not going to say they don't need to think about it, but they don't need to kind of exhaust their brains too much. It should be relatively simple to do. I think it just should be just practicing mostly. You could have some kind of reward system. So I have a chart, and I tick off whether children have given their homework in on time, or whether it was late or that kind of thing, and how well they did, how neat it was, and all that kind of thing. You could have some kind of reward system that at the end of the term, the person who's handed in all their homework on time and has worked really hard, and then they get like a little prize or something, or that kind of thing. And also just saying to the parents that from other teachers' experience and your experience, that the children who do their homework progress so much more than the ones who don't do homework. There's no doubt about it that doing a little bit of homework helps you to learn Arabic. And I know some of you might only have them doing Arabic once a week, and it's too long. They're going to forget, and there's no point in them learning Arabic if they're not going to do their homework. So maybe some kind of a reward system, or try and make it a bit interesting or something. I don't know.
Is your school after school club as well?
Yeah. So we're on Sunday and Tuesday. So Tuesday evening and Sunday afternoon.
And how long you do it? How many hours?
I now only have 3 hours, 2 hours on Sunday and 1 hour on Tuesday. They did have 3 hours on Sunday last year, so they had 4 hours a week. That's all they had. But Tuesday to Sunday I felt was just too long. I just felt like they needed something in between, so they always have like homework to do.
Yeah, it's our school is after school every day. So all 5 days, working days, they have 2 hours extra in FLA. So
Yeah.
the parents saying they have no time. The kids could do the homework because by the time they reach home, they need to wash, eat, and sleep. So it's a very short time for them in the evening. That's why even if I give homework and I do rewards, but still the kids are not doing it. Only maybe 1 or 2 of 8 could do it, but the others they don't. And you can't blame them or the parents for it because the time is short.
Yeah, within the week, I don't think it would work, and it wouldn't be reasonable to ask them to do homework from Monday to Wednesday, for example, for the elder classes, but something over the weekend. But the thing, as I said, our practice shows that there is quite a high number of parents who would actually come out and say, we're not doing homework, that's too much. My child is already going to school and then coming to, FLA after school and then doing something more during the weekend. That's just way too much. And if they're willing to help the child with the memorization or recitation, that is already a big thing. But for Arabic and Islamic studies, they're quite reluctant. And I see that the teachers struggling. I've sent out messages, over the years so many times, just to motivate, not to say that, blame anybody, or to motivate them from the sense, as you're saying, that it's been proven that it helps so much, even if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes. But it's just very, very hard to find this little thing that would motivate them to actually take out this 10 minutes and do this work with the children.
Yeah, I think that's something you're going to have to discuss between yourselves. I can't, obviously from far away, I can't really assess the situation. Maybe you can have a discussion about that on a separate occasion. So you need to think about what kind of homework should be sent home, how often obviously it's just going to be once a week. Once a week is fine. It doesn't have to be multiple times a week. And how are you going to give the instructions? Now, if you're printing off photocopying a sheet from an Arabic textbook, which has the instructions in Arabic, you must write it in English. Okay, most of your students are not Arabs, so you must write what it says. It says, read this and answer the questions or whatever. Just write it in English and then photocopy it for everybody. They have to know what the instructions are. Or you send out a message on your WhatsApp groups or whatever platform you have, send it by the platform that you use. You send out, say, this is the homework for this week and this is what they have to do. Or one of our teachers used to give voice messages, okay, just explaining what the exercise is and what they had to complete. So make sure the instructions are very clear, that the students don't forget what they are, and then send it to the parents as well. And obviously you need to have a record of, have they handed it in on time? Have they done it neatly? What have they done? Linked to homework and that kind of thing is assessment. You must assess your children to see if they've understood the concepts, okay? And obviously assessments vary between age groups. So if you've got the 5-year-olds, it might just be an observational thing that you've got. My learning objective for today was that they were going to use the word ahmar in a sentence to describe something. Has the child done it? Tick it off. If you can't remember, then maybe you need to assess them on a separate occasion. Oral questioning, concept questions, like asking them whether they understood. Not to say, do you understand? They'll probably say yes, or they'll say no, and then you're just stuck. So concept questions are kind of like, like questions that you will be able to gauge whether they've understood what you've and without asking them, have you understood? So vocab and spelling tests. My kids get vocab tests once a month. So all the vocab they're learning in Qisas Nabeen, they need to memorize it. And every 5th week, they've got a vocab test. They have to know all the vocab from the book. That's their target. And then at the end of every term, we do formal assessments as well. So you've seen it: comprehension, some kind of translation, and some other things to do with the books that they're reading and all sorts of things. You would probably have like a speaking element in yours. We don't really do much speaking, but you'd probably have like a speaking element. Now the other thing you obviously have to kind of think is, how are you going to record this? Now you must record what the children have understood, because when they move on to the next class, you have to be able to tell the teacher, this child has understood this concept, this child has not understood this concept. You need to have some kind of record, some kind of like report, so that you can tell the next teacher how much they've learned, because it's all very well looking at the syllabus, but how much of it have the kids actually grasped? Working as a team. You've got a team, mashallah. I don't have anybody really to work with here, so I'm kind of on my own. You've got a team, work as a team, share your resources and share your information, and having clear records that you can, as I say, pass on to the next teacher. And jazakumullah khairan. And that's marathon got to the end of my slides. I hope, inshallah, that something has been beneficial from what I've said today, presented. May Allah forgive me for any injustices I've done to the topic, and I wish you all the best in your teaching and your learning, and your sharing the joy and sharing the energy, and sharing the passion for Arabic language that I feel so strongly about.
Jazakallah khair, Samina. That was, mashallah, proper full on. And I know you've not been feeling too well, and you've actually given us your time and your effort to even prepare for this training. I think on behalf of all the teachers, there was so much for all of us to take and implement into our classes. May Allah reward you. I know you're an absolute amazing educator, seeing what you've been able to accomplish within the last 2 years with your students. Honestly, jazakallah khair, and I hope for all the teachers you have been able to take something out of today's training. And I would say just try and implement a few things into your lessons and incorporate something new, something that you've been able to take out of today. I know ideally we would have had questions also at the end, but I think to do with time, where hopefully we will share the PowerPoint with everyone. Caitlin will put that up on class on Dropbox. So feel free to go through that again and just use any information. And inshallah, we are in the process of trying to work on our targets and our assessments. So inshallah, with also this training, I've jotted down some ideas. So let's all inshallah come out of today with something that we can, include into our teaching or change.